Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here talking about a journey which we made in the last few years. So we call it the Responsible Tourism Journey by Kerala Tourism. Before I start, I need to talk to you about what Kerala is doing in the responsible tourism space. We have, by 2006, Kerala had already established itself as one of the important tourism destinations in India. And the growth was steady, the growth was strong, and we were recording about 17% of the state's GDP, direct and indirect, from tourism. But this also led to the question as to what is this sector doing for the community, and where do you want to take it from here? We need to act, the realization that we need to act responsibly to make sure that tourism continues to contribute to the community and is a sustainable model of tourism, of development for the state. There started the journey of Kerala tourism, ladies and gentlemen. We did think about this quite a bit, and I would credit Dr. Goodwin here as one of our mentors. I was particularly led by the experiments that the journey of responsible tourism in South Africa, where Dr. Goodwin had led the white paper on responsible tourism, the triple bottom line, and of course the Cape Town Declaration. So we evolved a framework first based on the learnings of international destinations like South Africa and the Gambia. And later we had the privilege of hosting the second international conference on responsible tourism that brought in practitioners and thinkers, community activists all together under a platform to look at responsible tourism and how things could be done better. Following that, the state government established started a consultative exercise involving NGOs, civil society organizations, and of course the departments within the state. And through this, we formed certain committees where we brought in all the stakeholders together. The intent was to make sure that we had a robust framework that can work its way to create a paradigm, an environment in which responsible tourism is practiced. We identified 4 destinations in different contexts in the state, and we call it our laboratories. We tried doing different things in these destinations, but all with the single idea of creating a multi-stakeholder participatory environment, number one, government supporting the whole exercise with policy initiatives, and of course the on-ground activation of the community. Now, why did we have to do this? We had to do this because although tourism was developing, there was a growing feeling in the community that we were not getting the benefits of tourism. So our idea was to make sure that the community was brought on board, not only as a participant, but as a beneficiary and as a leader, and to take on leadership role in tourism in destinations. So we had the state level committees, we had working groups. The self-help groups for women, needs to be said. In the community, what we tried to do was to motivate women from households which were never connected to tourism to discuss tourism and to say what kind of benefits can we get, what can we contribute to the tourism economy. And there we created women's self-help groups which came together and they partnered with the local government to provide services, to provide produces which could be used by the tourism enterprises in Kumarakom. So why did we do it this way? We wanted to make sure that the community network was empowered to create material that the tourism enterprises could absorb, could purchase. And through that, we wanted to make sure that the economic bottom line, the economic responsibility, the message of economic responsibility could be passed on to the hoteliers, to the tour operators and service providers, making sure that these lines are established and they become viable. So I'll just take a couple of minutes to talk about Kumarakom, the one destination that has now been recognized as a viable and robust responsible tourism destination We are not talking about one or two enterprises here. We are talking about a village which has transformed itself, integrated itself into the tourism economy, providing a very durable example of how responsible tourism can actually benefit the entire community. So we had an agreement, and this agreement is the central point in economic responsibility. The hoteliers and the service providers in Kumarakom came forward with a little bit of persuasion from us, came forward and volunteered to purchase vegetables and all the raw materials that could be possibly produced by the community in the village, even at a higher price. And that made all the difference. They exercised economic responsibility through their actions. And we had the producer groups, the villagers who were really not producing things that could be used, were converted into producer groups, producing vegetables, producing other materials that hotels could use. And of course, this was led by the local body, which we call the Panchayat. The local government invested money in empowering the community, in providing materials, fertilizer, support like financial incentives, all of which created a situation where the village was producing materials that were being consumed by the tourism industry. So here is this wonderful, viable partnership. The Panchayat or the local government providing leadership and financial support. Kudumbashree is the name we give for women's self-help groups, particularly of the poor. So they bringing together women and creating the platform where materials could be produced. Tourism stakeholders putting their hands up and speaking through their actions, purchasing materials from the local villagers and giving local employment to local villagers and abiding by the cultural and social concerns of the local community. Different kinds of engagement. We had the local supply chains, like I mentioned. These were created, tested, and are still running. Ethnic restaurants. The women's self-help groups started running restaurants which provided ethnic cuisine, revived the local cuisine also, and provided a great experience to the visitors. Micro-enterprises produced materials of different kinds that could be used by hotels. Paper bags, disposable stuff, vegetables, eggs, meat, and these were all purchased. So the village life experience provided another element where people could actually go into the villages, into households, and see this very rich and ancient culture. After 8 years, where have we reached? There was a survey done in 3,108 households, which is 14% of the population. 2,163 households are today involved in tourism, directly or indirectly. Naturally, households employed in tourism expressed that they had a good impact from tourism. But interestingly, tourism, these actions also brought positive impression about tourism to families which were not involved at all. This engagement has created full-time employment to hundreds, part-time employment to thousands. The weekly income, if you look at it, the full-time employment would be about 42.6 pounds per week, and off-season about 36 pounds. But beyond statistics, I'd like to close it here. Harold is showing eyes at me. Beyond statistics, this journey has made it the journey between the community, the visitor, the local body, and the hoteliers have it made very meaningful. Local taste, local ethnic cuisine has been revived. Crafts, handicrafts, which were a dying form, has been revived. Performing arts, again, which were neglected, has been revived. We are dreaming bigger. We want to make this into a statewide activity, involving more and more communities, which provide more and more opportunities for engagement and to benefit from tourism. We believe that the responsible tourism mission will take the message of responsible tourism from these laboratories of 4 destinations into the entire state of Kerala, where we believe that this network can take the involvement of more and more hotels and service providers so that the journey could be done together. The responsible tourism practices and principles would be adopted by the tourism trade. Today, the trade bodies have come forward and have made wonderful steps in enshrining responsible tourism into their practices. I'm sure Jose will have more to say about that. I will just close here with
Thank you very much, Venu.
Beef roasted, matti fry, ayla fry, chicken curry, chicken fry, Kerala meat.
Carol Mills. Yeah. When the world comes to Kerala, new worlds open up.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just now we've heard from the government point of view, and I'm now going to speak about one of the individual enterprises in Kumarakom and our practice of responsible tourism and how it has contributed to, and as an enterprise, we are a for-profit enterprise, how being responsible has benefited us while preserving environment and serving community. Usually it is felt that, like, if you want healthy food, it has to be not tasty food, or if it has to be responsible, it is not sexy enough. But here, on the other hand, we want to show you how being responsible has created business excellence. Knowing time limitation, and I have a number of slides to say it with a picture. This is the Coconut Lagoon in one of the enterprises, the pioneer enterprise of Kumarakom. And these houses, for example, are, I'll tell you, yeah. The brand is CGH Earth, and our model is include local community, minimize impact, and create business excellence. For example, if you take this, in the 1993, when the hotel was set up, the Kerala was going through a big new phase of development, resulting in many of the Tharawad houses being replaced. So, in fact, recycled architecture is part of this project. 72,000 square feet of buildings which have been demolished became the hotel. I became little ideas. A traditional practice of our state was open to sky, and a toilet open to sky creates not only reduces power, it's even created. It's an edible garden, a unique experience, and the hotel has become famous just on account of this feature. Or the big lobby is, thanks to our traditional architecture, it is need not to be air conditioned, and therefore not just saving in power, but the unique experience. Or the restaurant. I'm just giving examples. Now, going further, for us, we adopted a zero waste policy. All our biodegradable waste converted into gas, into fuel. So in fact, our savings is so enormous. On this account, it produces 10 tons of methane. The sewage treatment plant, and then you have the entire water required for the hotel is only rainwater. We have made it a policy that we do not tap into the municipal resource, nor take it from below the ground. It's entirely rainwater. And solar thermal is entirely from the abundant sun that we have. All of it translated to substantial financial savings, but more importantly, creating a unique identity, a personality, and a reason to stay here. Sarpakava. It's a tradition in our state to have a sacred grove. It is to worship the in a manner of speaking, the serpent. But more importantly, it is to create a gene pool, the biodiversity, preserve groundwater, and a feature of the hotel to engage with the local community's culture. Now, what is the cow doing here? The cow, we are on the village of Vechur. This cow is a breed called Vechur. And the hotel took it on itself to propagate and preserve this cow. And we found it's an extraordinary CRM tool. And in fact, I can recall a stockbroker from New York, after staying here for a week, sent a mail to our GM a week after he went back asking, the cow here, her name is Parvati. The question was, has Parvati calved? Is the calf male or female? That is the strongness of the connection that these features bring in. Of course, cuisine which is of a local in character, and which coconut or jackfruit. Part of our process is that we must break out from the normal way of doing things. So all the decor in the hotel is made only out of waste paper, waste plastics. These are the Christmas decorations which the staff have created. Our guest experiences, which do two things: create such an extraordinary guest experience, at the same time we participated with local community. Here the guests going fishing or farming for rice in the farms nearby. In fact, the farmer gets $5 to allow the customer to harvest the rice, and besides getting free labor. Of course, always natural local employment, which I'll come to in the next slide, which will show that we found there's no particular reason why we should, in other words, the ordinary, the local, the villager became the extraordinary employees of the hotel. And almost 95% come from either local village or the district around us. Similarly, local procurement. It's as shown to us and led by the state and the RT initiative there. We've gone to the maximum extent that it could be done. The economic impact of one enterprise to show that to create an identity and a personality which is so much in the word, in our local language, that drawing from our own. In the Malayalam word is tanima, our own, our local. We heard from the previous speaker about creating entrepreneurship. This lady here, Shanta, I'll just craft. Again, examples of craft. In fact, this logo is in fact a creation of a tribal community of Kumbarans. And this is the journey that we had, and I think it has convinced us that it not only benefits the environment, by inclusion community, but it creates extraordinary business excellence. Thank you.
Jose, thank you very much for that presentation. It really is an example about how good business can flow from responsible practice. Vinod, you were until recently a secretary in the Union Department of Tourism. I've asked you if you'd just give a reflection on what's been happening in Kerala and hopefully approve of it.
Mr. Harold, Dr. Venu, Mr. Jose, Mr. Hu, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be back this year again to speak on this important subject. Friends, with every passing year, the significance of responsible tourism is growing. And when I speak from Indian perspective, the rapid growth of tourism in India, almost 15% in the past few years, has resulted in greater awareness of the need to bring in responsible tourism in letter, spirit, and action. Three major events and developments have further accelerated our efforts towards responsible tourism in India. First, emergence and success of the Kerala model. Two, the subject of responsible tourism taking the global center stage, and observance of 2017 as International Year of Sustainable Development, Sustainable Tourism for Development by the entire world. Friends, India is now mobilizing all stakeholders to work for responsible tourism. Government is undertaking policy corrections and additions to ensure how to minimize harm to the environment, how to prevent negative impact on the social, culture and structure, and how to bring benefit to the economic well-being of the local community. The tourism industry in India is now proactively following global sustainable criteria indicators. The local communities are participating in the development of tourism. The tourists are being sensitized to act responsibly through awareness campaigns using electronic, digital, and social media. Public-private partnerships are happening. Last year, Ministry of Tourism and Eco-Tourism Society of India signed an MOU to further the interests and objectives of responsible tourism through awareness workshops and seminars. Outlook Traveler, an Indian publication, organizes a global responsible tourism summit once every year. Clean India is a nationwide campaign is being led by none other than the Honorable Prime Minister of India himself. And the Clean Ganga Drive has been launched by Indian government to clean the river Ganges, which is the major source of spiritual and religious tourism in India. Friends, while Kerala is replicating its successful Kumarakom model to other destinations across the state, the model is now emulated by other states and other regions in India. Responsible tourism initiatives in the form of rural tourism in Run of Kutch in Gujarat fetched for India the World Tourism Award for engaging with people and their culture. The Culture Angan homestays in Maharashtra and Rajasthan is an initiative where tourists stay with family and experience the culture of local village. The campaign on ban on plastic carry bags in many regions, the responsible tourism tours conducted for children by Salam Balak Trust, and the transformation of a barren land to a wildlife sanctuary in southern India by Save Animals Initiative are some illustrations of the success stories. Ladies and gentlemen, Kerala has emerged as a global leader in the field of responsible tourism. Despite its success, there is no slowdown in their efforts. In fact, Kerala has institutionalized the concept of responsible tourism in their tourism ecosystem. The proposed launch of Responsible Tourism Mission will certainly result in setting up of state RT cells in all the 14 districts, thereby bringing the entire state under the regime of responsible tourism. Kerala has a comprehensive organization structure having state level and destination level committees and also economic, social and environmental working groups for effective implementation of responsible tourism practices. The committees comprise representatives of government, local bodies, civil society, travel trade, local community and public representatives. Undoubtedly, Kerala will continue to be the torchbearer of responsible tourism for years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, tourism is a virtuous industry, and if we all desire that the virtues and benefits of tourism pass on to the future generations of mankind, everyone on this globe will have to act responsibly. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much indeed, Vinod. Zuki, can you, it's a great pleasure to have somebody from UNWTO here because they co-sponsor the event, the World Travel Markets Responsible Tourism Programme. But perhaps you'd just like to reflect on what you've heard.
Well, thank you, Harold. And, you know, it's very difficult to speak after our Indian friends who are always excellent speakers. But as the representative of World Tourism Organization or the UNWTO, all I need to say is to congratulate the Earth Hotels, the state of Kerala, and congratulate India as a whole. Because indeed, I'm extremely glad that this year, Harold you have been behind this WTM Responsible Tourism Initiative that this year and this session is especially devoted to the region of Asia. I'm extremely glad because this is the region where for decades growth has been extremely rapid. Rapid in the sense that we need to really stop and reflect. Not to stop to growth, but to reflect in order to strike a balance between, on one hand, the growth of tourism industry, but on the other hand, more importantly, how to sustain the growth. So from that angle, I wanted to congratulate and thank WTM's organizer in slotting this session for Asia. I'm even more glad that this session is devoted to India, because India has been also on the agenda of the UN WTO, showcasing when it comes to responsible tourism. In a more broader sense, it is this country of India that has been pioneering some of the initiatives on, especially in terms of the normative values, like the criteria for national sustainable tourism development, like you also heard earlier, the initiatives relating to ecotourism. And we hope that by showcasing the case of India, it's not only going to address the issue of India as a destination, which is an emerging giant, and how we can cope and cope well with the destination's rapid growth. But more importantly, this showcasing will certainly replicate in other parts of Asia and in the rest of the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, more specifically, the case of Kerala is, you already heard, not only from Dr. Venu, but also from a particular specific example of Earth Hotels. This is where I would like to think that only through these kind of initiatives that we can really link the agenda of tourism vis-a-vis a much broader picture of agendas on a social and economic lines, such as gender empowerment, such as job creation, but not any job creation, but job creation at the very micro level, as you heard, from village or from the surrounding areas of their hotels. But more so, this is certainly contributing to the broader social and economic agenda of what the UN system has been advocating, and especially linking tourism agenda vis-a-vis the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Question, and please excuse me, I arrived a little bit late in case this was already covered in the initial part of the conversation. India is has been known for the Companies Act, requiring companies to give 2% of profits to corporate social responsibility. What we see in the case here is well above and beyond all of that. But could you comment on whether that type of initiative and policy has had a positive effect on driving the rest of the country, the nation, or some of the stragglers in the destination to help contribute to some of these initiatives?
Under the Companies Act, today, 2% of the profits have to be used for corporate social responsibility. It can translate to 2% you do good, 98% you do whatever you want. So this is exactly the opposite of that, that your entire business must be modeled on environment, preserving environment, serving community, which creates business excellence. Yeah, but in your corporate 2% case, it's a statutory requirement. This is completely, the business model is based on serving, being purposeful. And purposeful business will have a case, has an excellence of, that's a way of business excellence, is what this model will say.
Dr. Venu, do you have a view on that?
I think the trick is to incorporate responsible practices into the DNA of every enterprise. And I think Kerala is taking great strides in this direction Because as I mentioned, when we started the work in Kumarakom, what I thought was the biggest challenge for us in government was to convince hoteliers who had the convenience of getting all they wanted for their kitchen, for whatever things they needed, things that would have been brought to their doorstep at a rate that they were at a reasonable rate. They suddenly had to undo this whole thing and actually negotiate with the community, purchase vegetables at a price that was higher than the market price. Now, why would a hotelier do that? And I think that is where the hoteliers in Kumarakom showed the way. They did not just talk responsibility, they took up ownership of this project by saying that we will not only purchase, we will provide commitments to purchase these things, but we will also work with the community so that we can tell them exactly what kind of stuff we need, when do we need it, at what quality. So here was the industry taking responsibility for the entire operation. And I think that goes far beyond this 2% or lip service.
Venu, do you want to comment?
I'll like to add what you have mentioned in reference to India. See, 2% corporate social responsibility part is statutory, it is compulsory. But when we talk of sustainable tourism initiatives and the practices which are being followed now, we are talking of community-driven efforts and practices. They are not imposed by a corporate sector or maybe a company. The initiatives cannot start from the company or the corporate level. It has to be community-driven. So basically, the government plays the role of a catalyst. It rather, it creates a climate. That is what the ministry and the government of India is doing. But it has to come from within. Whatever, other than Kerala model, whatever instances I gave for culture stay homestays, they have been started at the grassroots level. They are not company created. So this, whatever we are speaking, is over and above what is the statutory provision in the law in India. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question here, I think.
More than a question, I'd like to thank two great visionaries out over here, Mr. Dominic and Dr. Venu. In fact, they were the pioneers who thought about something, before this became a jargon by itself, something called sustainable tourism. Because I still remember 20 years back, Casino Group of Hotels, when they went for the rebranding from Casino to CGH Earth, and when Kerala tourism got branded into God's own country, that is when where that sustainable model was showcased to the entire Kerala community. Really proud to hear from you both over here, sir. And would also like to add on that I represent the Ravis Hotels and Resorts. So taking the cue from pioneers like you have started off the way, even we have also started doing our own community initiative. For example, in Kovalam we have something called the Zero Waste campaign, which was started long back, and we have taken a thread from over there. In all our hotels, there is no waste that is actually generated. And what is actually generated is getting converted into something else. And that's a very good concept over there. Even very recently, we also did a boat race in Ashtamudi, where we are trying to promote Ashtamudi as a responsible tourism destination by itself, and where you talk about the fish, or you talk about the organic produce of vegetables and grains that we have done. It's also all sourced from the local community, which is around, let's say, 4 to 5 kilometers of vicinity of the hotel. So we do it for all the 4 properties. So thank you so much for leading the entire thing to the entire world over here, and it's a privilege and an honor hearing from you both, sir. Thank you so much.
It's always good to hear something being replicated. Is there another question? Can I ask a question then? The 2% compulsory contribution which all businesses make, is that actually a disadvantage or an advantage? Do many businesses think, well, we've made our contribution, we don't need to do anything else? How are businesses responding to that?
When the 2% statutory provision that is coming, yes, it makes much more money which is coming in for social good. It's usually becoming more philanthropic, it's more donation oriented. But in this case, there's a big huge difference in this. Here, it is driven into the, as Venu was saying, into the DNA of the model. And doing good or serving community and is linked, is as is profitable, is creating brand excellence, is therefore I think these two are completely separate.
It's certainly creating more than 2%, that's for sure. Dr. Venu, can I put you on the spot with the last question? It occurred to me listening to your presentation and thinking back over the period since 2008. Things weren't good in 2008. And looking back now, you might say that was an example of over-tourism, which Kerala dealt with very early and came up with a strategy as a way of making sure that the community also benefited from tourism. Is that a fair assessment of the history?
Oh, very much so, very much so. I think Kerala confronted the problem of tourism becoming an elitist activity benefiting just a small part of the population, even while the community bore the brunt of unregulated growth of tourism. I think this became a point of discussion, even a point of protest. In Kumarakom, for instance, in 2004-05, we had many protests, not merely by some fringe organizations. We had protests even by the local government, which said that we are being marginalized here and we don't think we need tourism. From that point, to have reached a situation where in this very stage we had members of the local government, coming forward and talking about responsible tourism as their project. This is not a project of the tourism department today. And most important of all, the tourism industry of Kerala, in the biggest group, the fraternity there is called the Kerala Travel Mart Society, where about 600 of the local enterprises are members. Now they have come together and they've framed Agenda 9 cardinal points of action, most of which talk about practicing tourism responsibly. The industry, as I mentioned, has now taken full ownership of responsible tourism, and I'm seeing this as a good. Tourism will do more and more. We will find more and more examples of tourism in Kerala connecting and engaging with communities in their vicinity.
Thanks very much, Venu. Suji, I think one of the things that I take away from this is that actually the initiatives in Kerala are much broader than Kumarakom, and I think UNWTO should be making more of it as a wonderful example from Asia of what can be achieved.
Indeed, Harold, it's not only a wonderful example, but I think it will certainly shine as part and parcel of the worldwide celebration of the International Year for Sustainable Development. So indeed, and not only India is doing it, elsewhere in Asia, this advocacy agenda is increasingly catching the attention not only of the government, but more importantly, the private sector as a whole. For example, the government of Japan, linking with the industry, is also coming forward with this idea of Responsible Tourism Award that is being given on an annual basis for the successive 3 years already.
Thanks very much indeed. If I may, on your behalf, thank the panel for what I think is one of the most important sessions of this year's WTM Responsible Tourism Programme. We just say thank you in the usual way.